Hello and welcome. My name is Jess, and you're listening to Legaltini, a dynamic, hopefully insightful, and somewhat entertaining podcast documenting my experience getting into law school and following my story in the years to come. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm very excited to share what I have to share with you. So grab your Legaltini and let's take a sip. Good morning. Today on this week's episode, we are going to talk about being a young fish in an old sea. A few weeks ago on my Instagram story, I asked the question if anyone ever feels like their age is used against them in the workplace or that they're looked down on because of being younger than other people. And almost everyone responded that at least sometimes that is the case. There was one person who said never, but that was a boy and he's an engineer. So I don't know. I feel like the culture is a little bit different in that environment. Every other person responded with either always, sometimes, or that used to happen. So I wanted to talk about not even just ageism in the workplace, but just tactics to tackle being younger, because a lot of us are younger and in positions of authority or management over other people who have been in whatever industry for a lot longer or may just be more seasoned workers. So I have a lot of experience in that because when I started my healthcare experience in the working world, I was a lot younger than the people that I was charged with managing and working with. And so I feel that I've got a surprising amount of experience in that world. So what I want to do is share just some techniques that I use that have really helped me kind of master that. And I've gotten a lot of compliments over the years about how I manage teams, even though technically I am in age younger than them or in experience less seasoned and less experienced than them. So as a younger person entering the work world with a license to run an entire facility, it's definitely been challenging at times to overcome the expectations that people have for me. They're expecting me to be, to come in and be this childish, emotional, flippant, kind of underprepared, timid, and entitled worker. And really what I am and what I have been in these roles is driven, very analytical, calm in chaos, well-trained and resourceful, and a good leader. And I think people don't always expect that from a young person because usually you get a lot of immaturity and rash decision making where you're not really considering all of the elements. You're not seasoned enough to know, okay, if we do XYZ, we should be expecting these other things to follow. So getting my first job in this industry was extremely difficult because everyone just discounted me. And I get it. I mean, I was really young when I first started and I was, this platinum blonde, young 20-something-year-old. I think I was 24 when I was first interviewing for these roles. And people, they would say, you're great, you interview so well, you know what you're doing, you've done all of these other roles that you'd be managing, you're a great candidate. But, and there was always this really kind of stagnant place in the conversation where they would turn and they would say, but I'm having a hard time imagining you in this role and having people respect you and having them report to someone so young. They just kind of couldn't place me in that role in their minds. And I really had to work on my confidence and how I present myself, not really physically, I didn't change the way I looked or anything. I mean, I was still a, platinum blonde, long-haired girl, basically, when I got my first job in this leadership role. But I had to present myself with a lot of confidence, and I had to work on my presence in a room and be able to command the room in a way that other people didn't necessarily have to do because they were just older or they were just more seasoned. So here are some tactics that I have used that I feel really have contributed to my ability to land roles that are, I'm perceivably a lot younger than people who would traditionally land these roles. The first thing is to fight the entitlement. Millennials are known, unfortunately, as a generation who is extremely entitled and feel that they need a raise every month and that they have earned this role and they deserve it. And that is something that really bothers me personally, because you haven't earned these roles. And that was the approach that I took to a lot of these jobs is, listen, I'm going to put in the work. I'm going to do exactly what I say I'm going to do. I know my worth, and here's what it is worth to you. If you have to state the obvious that you're valuable and doing great work and that's greatly benefiting the company, either you're not doing enough of it to make it clear and obvious that you are worth what you're being paid and what you're being asked to do, or they're not looking. And so you have to work on your end to be more visible to them and be more kind of out in the open about the value that you're providing. And there's a lot of really specific ways that you can do that, but it's one of those two things, right? Either you're not doing enough of it or they're not seeing what you're doing. And so if you can work on those angles before you stomp your foot and demand, I need this. Stomping your foot and demanding anything isn't cute after about 2 years old. Now, there's a difference between knowing your worth and not, being treated in a bad way or being demeaned, or there's a difference between knowing your worth and throwing temper tantrums that make you look childish and immature. I'm sure you can kind of in your mind make a reference point of the difference between those two things. The other thing is kind of in this same realm of fighting this urge to be entitled and be kind of the focus, I guess, of everything, is not stomping on other people's ideas. A lot of times when people are insecure in their leadership position, other folks on their team who provide good ideas or have success in something that they do, the poor leader will sort of stomp out their idea or try to claim it as their own, instead of really just embracing and celebrating that other people's hard work and success in something is still worthwhile and is worth celebrating. A lot of times people will feel like a younger leader can't swallow that, like they can't muster up that self-confidence, and they need their own ego to be sort of the focus of everything. So not stomping on other people's ideas, and in fact celebrating when other people are successful, or even if you have a great idea, almost giving someone else the credit for it and they know that that's what you're doing. It really is evidence of a leader who is selfless and wants to be part of the gang, versus basically just wants all of the praise and then has other people do all the work. We've all been on that team, right? With the leader who is like taking all your ideas and telling their boss that this is what I did. Ridiculous. The second thing that I learned to do to manage people that are older and more technically experienced is to know your stuff and do the work. So you can't show up to a meeting unprepared and think that you're going to impress anybody in that meeting. You have to do the work. You have to know what you're talking about. In my world, that meant a lot of research on the back end about policy and regulation and calling people. I have a lot of resources in this industry just because I know so many people. My whole family is in this industry. And so before I would go to a meeting about a certain regulation or a certain situation, I'd call several people and say, hey, what have you seen in this world with this scenario? Has this ever happened at your facility? What can you tell me about this, so that I show up and I'm prepared and I can say, well, I've seen it done this way, or I've heard that if we do it this way, then this is what's going to be the outcome of that. Prove them wrong and do the most to prepare and sit in that seat of leadership knowing that you have done the work on the back end to be prepared for the conversation. Even if you don't know the answer to the problem and you're still baffled by it just like everybody else, situating yourself where you're asking direct questions and you're sort of steering the conversation, you have ideas ready to begin the brainstorm. The first few ideas of a brainstorm, we always say that the first 3 ideas are trash and then you come up with the rest. So if you can present those first 3 ideas and be the one to kind of get the ball rolling, then you can kind of manage from that seat of, I've already thought this through a lot, but I'm coming to you because you're the one that I think has the solution to this, is really empowering to the people that you work with. The next tactic is probably the hardest, and it is draw a line, and I mean a line, between people who report to you and people who are your friends. You cannot expect to be someone's manager if you are buddy-buddy with them. And that's really tough when you get promoted and you have to kind of shift your lines and your boundaries, but it's easiest when you come in, obviously, and you are already their manager. But it's really tough because you have to manage people, and there has to be a dynamic there where you're able to say, hey, this is my expectation. But you also don't want to be mean. You don't want to be rude to these people or make them feel like they can't trust you or that they can't come to you with questions or problems. You have to find this line in the sand where you're able to have a great time and create a great positive working environment, and they trust you, but they don't feel too comfortable, and they don't feel like they can slack off and you're not going to say anything. You really need them to respect you, and doing these other things is really how you gain that respect. But a really quick way to lose it is to become too close of friends with them, going out drinking with them or slacking off on your own and telling them about it. That's a great way to lose all respect. So find that line and stick to it. And then if, you stop working there and you really enjoyed them, you can always connect with them after the fact, or if they get promoted and so now you're at an equal level, something like that is totally fine. But you have to know where those boundaries are, and they have to know also, and you have to make that clear to them. The last tactic that I have is, above everything else, you have to be fair. Young people, whatever the generation, so anyone that's younger than you're perceiving them as their older counterpart, you will perceive them as immature and not considering the bigger picture. So anyone that is older than you is perceiving you that way, and then anyone that's younger than you, that's how you perceive whatever generation is below you. Think of how you look at a toddler. They're so narrow-minded because all they see is what they want in this moment. And that's basically how someone more seasoned than you in the workplace is looking at you. They're looking at you as narrow-minded, and all that you see is what you need or want in this moment. So if you can take time to look at the entire scenario before making any knee-jerk decisions or comments, and be the one to consider elements that other people have overlooked, this just breathes maturity into your decision-making and forces people to basically put you on the map, and makes them say, oh, okay, they are a lot more mature or a lot more decisive than I had understood them to be. And vice versa, if you don't do that, then they're basically gonna say, yep, I knew it. They are young, they're immature, they're flippant, all of these, things that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. You have to be able to look at the bigger picture. And what that means is that you're fair to everyone. So going back to drawing a line, between friends and coworkers or people that you manage, you have to be fair above everything else. And that doesn't work if you have kind of sidebar friendships with people that you're working with that you don't have with other people. Another key thing that good leaders do, and people who are respected and mature leaders do, is share the compass or the general direction of where we're going with the people that are working for you. So not a turn by turn, here's all of the steps that we're taking, but just a general direction and vision that you can share with your team to say, here's the goal, here's where we're going. Don't you want to go with me? And ask people to be part of that story or that path with you. And, how do you see yourself as being part of this vision? How can you help sort of carry this vision forward and involve them in that? Because a lot of times leaders are very silent, and you don't really know where you're going, and you don't feel like the whole ship, is going together. Everyone's kind of going in several different directions and very one track mind of what they're supposed to be doing. But if you can show them the bigger picture and the larger direction and vision for your team or for your project, it it helps them to feel like they're invested and feel like it's a team. You're all working towards the same larger goal. And when you ask people to be a part of that and say, here's the vision, how do you fit into that? Then they feel empowered and inspired that what they're doing matters and it's important to the team and other people are counting on them. You also want to welcome new ideas. You can have comment boxes, you can have forums where people are able to just share thoughts that they're having or questions that they have, so that you can inspire people to want to be involved and to want to lead themselves. I mean, the biggest compliment to a leader is someone else saying, you have made me want to do XYZ, become a leader, be better at my job, pursue a passion. That's the highest of the high compliment when you get that from someone saying that you've inspired me or motivated me to do this thing. That is incredible. It's such a good feeling. And then it's also in turn inspiring to that leader, where you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm making a difference. I'm actually having an impact on the people that I'm managing, because that's why we lead. That's why we want to manage. We love to inspire and motivate other people, or at least that's for me. Maybe other people don't take management roles for the management piece of it, but I love leading. I love seeing that other people can succeed and can grow and affect change on what they're trying to do. I think that's just magic, and that's what I love about leadership. And you have to ask people for their commitment to that and their vision to match with yours, and then you just say, okay, here's where we're going. Like, this is the dream, won't you come with me? And when people are motivated to do that, it's really an inspiring thing. When you see people getting demotivated or uninspired, it's usually because they've been silenced when they try to speak or when they try to present ideas. So try really hard, even if someone's presenting an idea that you've already tried before and won't work, or there are obvious holes in it to you, try to really help walk them towards that understanding of the situation, instead of just smashing, for X and Y reason, we can't do that. Try to help hold their hand a little bit and walk them towards that, so that then they feel like they've really flushed out an idea without being stomped on. And when someone does come up with an idea that is really good, or that you've kind of been able to flush out into this really great, step-by-step idea, really empower that person to have the motivation and the energy to do those tasks. Make it their project. You want to support them. You want to celebrate their successes, but it's your project. You run with it. Tell me how I can help you. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, celebrate those successes and really honor the people who are contributing. That serves as a great model to other people who are maybe considering sharing ideas. That's how you turn a member from an observer into someone who's actively involved. And ultimately, that's the goal, is to have team members who are all actively involved, all engaged, all working towards a common goal. And once you've achieved that, then you've achieved great leadership, and that's a great testament to a leader. So those are my thoughts on how to sort of manage when you are a less seasoned or younger person coming into a role where you're managing people who are older than you. It can be a challenge. It can be really frustrating at times, because you feel like you're doing all the right things and you're saying all the right things, but because it's coming from you, it's less respected. But I do really believe, and I've seen it in my own life, that when you can present this information and these ideas from a place of confidence and maturity and really thinking things through, before meetings and being prepared and using your resources, when you do all of those things, you really have a better shot at managing people who are older than you. That's all that I've got for this week's episode of Legaltini. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check me out on Instagram. It's at Legaltini_podcast. You can also check out my website, where I've got a shop and an About Me section and a Contact Me, and that is legaltini.com. Thanks so much for listening. This has been Legaltini, your very own sip of law school.